You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn. I'm Claire Pedrick, and today my guest sent me an email when I sent her the joining notes and said, please wear a headset. And she went, it's so amazing to be sent those because normally I send them out to other coaches. Because today's guest is a virtual assistant, the angel of coaching. Kathy Soulsby, welcome to the Coaching Inn.
Hi, Claire. Thanks so much for inviting me.
That was so funny.
Yeah. I can't tell you how many times I have sent that email going, please don't be in a cafe with, coffee grinders going off and dodgy Wi-Fi in the background when you join a podcast. And then I literally made myself put my headset on my desk last night so I wouldn't forget the shame of being that guest.
It's all right. You're not that guest. I can tell everybody she's wearing her headset.
I am.
Kathy, you've written a book about how to work with a VA, and what an amazing thing that is. How, why, if, because. But before we talk about VAs, tell us a bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a very varied career pre-VA-dom. I was a restaurant manager for many years and worked in pubs after graduating. I then was desperate for what I thought of as a proper job behind a desk, mainly because I have quite a bad hip. So running up and down restaurant stairs is not good for me. So I took a job as a customer relations executive, and nobody threw garlic bread at my head, which was vast improvement on restaurant life as far as I was concerned. And then I fell into being a PA, and I really did fall. I have no PA skills whatsoever. I can't touch type. I definitely can't audio type. And I didn't really fancy the title secretary. But when I fell into being a PA, it was like I came home, because actually what you get to do as a PA is organise people. And I love organising people. And you get to help them do what it is that they do and support them to do that and make their lives easier. And I just love that. That's what makes me happy every day. So yeah, I fell into being a PA. And after many years of PAing for management consultancies, coaches and kind of individual folk, I decided to set up on my own as a VA in 2014. Wow. And have been going ever since. And there's now me, and I have a team of 30 associates who work with me, and we support all sorts of people. We have a lot of coaches on the books, still a lot of consultants, and a few left field folk who do all sorts of things. But it's great fun, and I get to do what I love every single day.
I think I might have a new customer for you.
Oh, always nice.
Who falls into the and other folk?
Yes. Yes.
It's funny, isn't it, when you say something and it triggers a connection?
Yeah.
If you'd said to me, do you know anybody who, I probably wouldn't have made that connection at all. But you just described somebody I was talking to last week.
Other folk.
Other folk who do kind of things.
Do stuff. Yeah. Yeah, people who do things. That's it. People who do things. People who have a busy life.
I'm really interested that you've come into this organising people thing from customer service rather than from detail admin, as you said, touch typing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and those skills are wildly helpful, perhaps less so these days than in times gone by. But actually, with the improved technology, there's much less need to do things like audio typing or,
exactly.
My cobbled together typing is absolutely fine, because to be honest, I'm not, somebody's not dictating a letter to me these days. They're, leaving a voice memo going, Kathy, can you reply to so-and-so? Tell them yes, but not yet. And can you reply to this person from my emails and say, thanks, we've already got a charity of the year, try again next year, or, and I get to use my brain. I'm not just a funnel for somebody else. That's the joy of having a really good EA who understands you. And to be honest, at one of my bosses who I worked with for the longest period of time, was over 10 years, I could write an email as her, and within several weeks, neither she or I could tell which one of us had written it, because I was her brain. I knew what her response would be, and I knew her tone, and I could write that email and no one could really tell the difference. So, when it's a long way down the line, that level of understanding somebody else's ways of working, but it's entirely possible. And it's so easy to get bogged down into the I have to do everything mode. And there are quicker ways of doing things. Even if you do have to do some of it, you perhaps don't have to do every last bit of it when you've got somebody good supporting you.
Yeah, Rebby in our comms team can write as me, and I never know if I wrote it or not.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. So it's interesting because in my journey, I had a VA for a long time, years and years and years, and a team like yours.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely fabulous. And then one day I realised that the business had got to the size where I actually needed somebody all the time.
Yeah.
And now we need somebody all the time. And there was a season when paper mattered,
yes,
when I needed them to be able to touch the paper. And of course, now that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because pretty much everything is virtual. But why do people choose a VA, Kathy?
I think the beauty of most VAs in how they're set up is that we support multiple clients. So your commitment is less. We're a freelance. You invoice us business to business with an agreed number of hours. So, not that many people. You're at that point where you need a whole PA now. And we always think that's an amazing success if we have to stop working with someone because they're ready to employ a full-timer. That to us is like the best ending of a working relationship. But most businesses don't need a whole PA. They need an hour a day or 20 hours a month or whatever. And the flexibility of a VA is that you can absolutely have that. So you get support, but you don't have to commit to either employing them and all that entails with, national insurance, holiday pay, sickness pay, all that kind of stuff. But you get someone who's going to work alongside you in your business, usually with your email address. And it's, the payoff is you don't have them all the time. So like you said, you needed somebody just there when you needed them. You don't have that so much with a VA because they're juggling multiple clients. You only get them, a couple of times a day or, when they check in, which some people, it doesn't gel with at all. But most businesses these days, as long as there isn't the volume of work there, don't need somebody, old school sitting outside their desk, ready to stick their head around the corner and go, can you get me a coffee? Or, can you come in and dictate this letter? Times have moved on. Even employed EAs now, a lot of them work remotely or, only come into the office a couple of days a week. So, it's changing times and it's much more flexible for smaller businesses. Although we do actually have some quite big businesses on our books as well.
We used a VA for many years to answer the phone, and now nobody rings us up. But in those days, it was really funny because I used to work. I didn't work in the school holidays. I didn't work after I picked up the kids from school at 3:30, and the VA would pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And I can remember one day they were quite small, and I was watching Blue Peter with the kids, and somebody rang up, and the VA was so good that she went 3D coaching. Kathy speaking, how can I help you? And they said, can we talk to Claire? And Kathy said, I'm sorry, Claire's not in the office at the moment. And this person went, I know she's there. Because they knew that I was in.
Yeah.
But of course, Kathy's going, she's not working because I was watching Blue Peter. Kathy wasn't going to put a call through to me because Blue Peter was much more important.
Yeah.
But what that taught me was that we were so seamless that the people who were ringing in actually knew that they were talking to the company, to us, and not to a random person outside, which was beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because you've got to be part of the team.
You are, absolutely. Even if that team is only 2 people, you're still part of the team, and I absolutely love that. I love that feeling of being part of a team, whether that's you and your client or you and, one of our clients got something like 200 staff. So there's teams and teams and teams.
Yeah.
And we're part of most of them,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. So I have a question which is in multiple parts. So one of our listeners is going to say to me, Claire, that was a double question. When do people hire a VA and when should they?
When do they is usually a fraction too late, in my experience. They tend to look for a VA at the point when it's all gone a bit pear-shaped and they're drowning. They perhaps have lost all semblance of a work-life balance and, evenings are spent frantically catching up on emails, and they should have done it sooner. The challenge with doing it, so I'm going to answer in several parts, two-part question. The challenge with doing it too late is not only that you're already exhausted because you're working too hard, you also don't have the time to commit to that new relationship, which is really important. If you're running at 110 miles an hour, you haven't got the bandwidth to then give somebody new the time to train them up, to explain how things work. You're just at the, oh my God, I just need to throw tasks at this person and hope for the best, which isn't ideal. I mean, it happens, but it's not the best way. Ideally, you need to bring a VA in before you reach that tipping point. So as soon as you can afford it, to be honest, and you might bring somebody in doing less and then with a plan to ramp up in the future. That is absolutely fine. And that's how a lot of people work. And once they get used to delegating things to a VA, they then discover that there are more things that they can delegate, or the VA will go, why are you doing that? We could do that quicker, or I'm sure I could do some of that. They find things they can take off you, after looking at you in horror and going, oh, please tell me you don't sit down and do that every week. No. So yeah, that would be, before you get too busy, would be the ideal answer.
Yeah, it's funny because my dad died recently, and he thought he might need care, so he bought in care for half an hour every day, but in the end he never did. So these lovely ladies would come every day and they emptied the dishwasher, they hung out the washing, but he needed somebody there because on the day that he needed somebody to help him have a shower, it was too late to find somebody to help him have a shower.
Yeah.
And that's what you're describing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Getting somebody in who can understand how things work, what you're like, who your clients are, how it all falls together before they're suddenly having to do a gazillion things without that background knowledge. Absolutely.
And it may be that they do empty the dishwasher for a bit, but that's good.
Because... Yes. Yeah. It may be that they do a bit of grunt work to start with, as they start to see. But I mean, I do describe in the book, there's a bit of a process you can go through to work out what tasks you do every day and which tasks you should not be doing every day. And as long as you've got a reasonable chunk of those, you can be sure that you've got something for them to do, even if that's perhaps not getting right in there, dealing with client queries on day one. It's a bit further down the line where once you've got to trust them and got to know them.
In the old days, I had a in tray for my fantasy admin person.
Amazing.
And all the time I was working, I would put the things that they need to do in the in tray. And you could do that, couldn't you, in a folder in your emails? But I put everything in there. And then one day the basket was big enough that I realized that I was spending at least 3 or 4 hours a week doing their work. But then it makes it really easy to delegate because you know what their work is because you've separated it off from yours.
I love that. That's such a good way of doing it in this technical world of just going, I shouldn't be dealing with that. Somebody else can do that, and just sticking it in a folder and then examining it. Absolutely.
We do that with all our new roles, actually.
Yeah, great idea. Just a real visual of what's there and that falls outside of what you can be doing.
Because I think that one of the things that I notice is that the things that are most annoying to you are when we won't let go or can't let go or don't let go.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that was a yes, yes, yes.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, micromanagement. It's not good. It's not good when you, and I did speak to somebody yesterday who made me laugh a lot. So I'm definitely sensing you're not a micromanager. And she went, well, I am if they're shit. Well, we're going to aim for not shit, if that's okay, but I get it. I think there is a tendency when you're nervous to over engineer and oversee things in too much detail. But once that initial getting to know you period is over, you have to be a bit hands off. Otherwise, you're not saving any time. If you're double checking everything, how is that freeing you up to do other more important things? It's not. So yeah, micromanaging. And there are ways of, we have some clients. Micromanager is a strong term, but they're certainly very detail focused and they like to be in the loop on everything. And most VAs will be able to adjust their ways of working to fit that. Some will find it easier than others. It would drive me mad, but I have had clients where I do it and you just get into a rhythm of it. And, you adapt yourself to work with that person and their preferences. That's part of being a really good EA and VA. Some people are easier to adapt to than others, depending on what your working style is. I'm not naturally a detailed person. I'm much more of a give it to me, I'll sort it, I'll shout if there's a problem kind of person. So I know I work better with those kind of people. Yeah. It's just different personalities, isn't it?
Yeah. And actually, the detail people are not the people who need the VA first.
No, possibly. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Some people can get themselves so bogged down in the detail that they're actually working more than they perhaps need somebody to help them prize themselves out of the detail. But yeah.
Yeah. So what's your hope for your book, Kathy? How to Work with a Virtual Assistant, Outsource Everything but Your Brilliance. Great title.
Thank you. And it's got a little bit of weird karma to it, actually. Somebody many, many years ago when I first set up the business kind of gifted me the Outsource Everything but Your Brilliance line. And it was Coach, actually. And we were having a coffee in a really unimpressive poster in a garden centre, just a one-to-one. And it just came out and she kind of went, oh, you can have that. I was like, oh, thanks. And it's kind of stuck with me. I've used it as my tagline because it just so effortlessly describes how outsourcing works. There are things that only you can do. That is what you are hopefully paid to do. And all the other stuff is not only you shouldn't be doing it, but quite often it's actually dragging you down. It's using up your headspace and it's stopping you growing as a business, but as a person as well, potentially. And I have this conversation so frequently with prospects and with clients. I went, I should write this down. So I wrote my first book back in 2017, which is Virtually Painless, for PAs thinking of moving to the world of VAs. And that is a much more relaxed book, shall we say? Quite a lot more gin and dogs and general mayhem in there. It's a sort of unbusinessy business book. This one was a bit more grown up, thank goodness. And yeah, I just feel like I have this conversation with clients and they kind of immediately go, oh yeah, oh, I get it. Right. Yeah. It's not just about, boring admin stuff I don't want to do. It's actually doing this admin is actually holding me back from, in some cases, they're not growing a business. They're, I have a couple of coaches on the books. They're heading towards retirement. They don't want to grow an empire or anything. They're just happy doing great work with great clients. But, with me on board, it means that they don't have to spend a day a week doing admin. They can go for the allotment and big stuff. It's that simple. They get to do what it is they want to do, whether that is building a business or it's having a life outside of work. So yeah, so it's been in the pipeline since 2018, but I think I was just a bit I was a bit booked out after the first one, and then we hit the pandemic, and it was so busy. So it just didn't happen. And then I got myself a new VA, the lovely Helen, and then suddenly found I had the headspace to go, oh yeah, I can write a book now. I'm not holding everything in my own head. So that's how it came about. On the back of many client conversations.
So it's basically how to be a good customer if you work with Kathy and other VAs.
Yeah. Well, it's how to be a good customer, but I think it's also how to be, how to find the right person, because it is a bit of a minefield out there. There are a gazillion VAs, and anybody, a bit like being a counsellor, can, say, I'm a VA, let me into your business. Let me see all your client data. Let me meddle in your website, all the rest of it, with no, there's no regulation on what we do as an industry. And therefore, finding somebody who is really important, knowing how to find somebody without doing that horrific thing where you post on LinkedIn, hi, I'm looking for a VA, and a million people will respond and tag in randoms from everywhere. You've got to be really, really focused. And hopefully the book takes you from, oh, what can I outsource? Am I ready to outsource? Because sometimes the answer isn't a VA, and that's pretty clear in the book. Sometimes the answer is you need a PA employed. Sometimes you need a specialist. You might need a social media specialist, a marketing specialist. VAs cover a multitude of things, but unless they are specialists in their area, they perhaps only do a light version. And what you're going to have a VA do by way of social media, unless they're a specialist, is very different to hiring a full social media company who's going to create you a strategy and build you a plan. And, they're worlds apart. So you need to work out what it is you want somebody to do. And then that can direct you into who it should be. And then it takes you through, and how do I find this unicorn for me? And just gets you thinking about what kind of personality do I need? And ridiculous things like, do I need someone who works school holidays?
Exactly.
Don't. If you spend weeks hiring a person for them to go, oh yeah, by the way, I don't work any half terms, and you go, but neither do I, and I need someone to man the fort.
Yeah.
You're in trouble, aren't you? So it's thinking through what's important to you, what would really annoy you if it went wrong, starting with that, and then going, okay, so I need to make sure that whoever I work with does work school holidays, even if that is a sort of skeleton cover. And if I do webinars and I need support on a webinar once a month of an evening, they have to be happy to do that, because some, like all freelancers, we set our own boundaries and hours, and some people will not work an evening. So it's making sure you've thought through all those nuances of who you want, and then a quite structured way of going out there in a sensible sort of schematic way to find the right person for you. So it's kind of a how to do it from start to finish. And the end bit is kind of what I do in my business when I talk to somebody and I go through, right, okay, what do you need? Who would be a good fit? So it's that bit. But obviously people can entirely do it themselves, with the help of the book. That's the hope.
Yeah, amazing. There was a season where we thought we might get somebody in Australia or New Zealand for exactly the reason that you are talking about, because they had different holidays. And also we wondered whether having somebody overnight might add value. In the end, we decided that wasn't what we needed. But there are some businesses where having somebody overnight is exactly what you want, because when you pick up in the morning, it's all been done.
Exactly. And we have some clients in the States, and I'm always quite cautious and say, you do realise we're based in the UK and we don't work those hours. I do have a couple of US based VAs, but they were not, after that, they wanted a UK based VA. But no, we know what we want. We're not time sensitive. Things don't turn around that fast. We want somebody in the UK. That's kind of our remit. So it works. Yeah, it's just finding what's right, and things might change over time. You know, that's, as you said, you've got seasons where there's all of a sudden a load of paper, seasons where you might have a load of clients in the States, for example, and all of a sudden having that evening cover is quite important.
Yeah.
So I think the beauty of VAs is that we're not permanent, we're not set for life. If things change in your business, it's quite easy to make a change, and you're not tied into an employment contract where you've got to give somebody notice and go through all of that. With a VA, you just kind of go, okay, this is happening in the business. Can you work with this, or do I need to find somebody else? And take it from there. You know, we are used to clients coming and going. I mean, some stay for eons, obviously, but others, it is just a project, or it's it's a 6-month stint, a 2-month stint. So you've got that flexibility. And, you know, a lot of VAs know other VAs. So one of the best ways of finding a VA is to ask a VA, because they'll know somebody, you know.
So know what your criteria are.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And know what your lines in the sand are. And which things can go. Like, you know, some people are really slightly obsessive about seeing people in person, and like, oh, I really want someone local. And you go, well, the whole virtual thing, that's kind of what it means. You know, we don't really go out. I mean, we do, but not often. But some people really like to meet their VA, and it's okay. Well, if there's the perfect person, but they live in Edinburgh and you live in London, is that going to stop you working with the perfect person? Not because they need to do any work with you, but just because you fancy a coffee or a Christmas lunch every once in a while. It's not a sensible trade-off. You need the right person, and you just accept your relationship is going to be purely virtual, unless you decide to go to Edinburgh, which, you know, is fine. We've had some clients travel all over the place to meet their VAs. Just because they want to.
Yeah. So what are your top tips for hiring?
Top tips for hiring are do your due diligence. So as a minimum, VAs should have professional indemnity insurance. They should offer you a contract. Unless you particularly want to use one that you have, they should have the ability to contract with you, and they should be registered with the ICO because they're holding data, as pretty much everybody should. So if you've got those 3 things, you can pretty much, and they don't look at you blankly when you mention them, that's a really good sign that they're properly set up businesses. They're not, doing it for a bit of a laugh to raise a bit of extra funds for Christmas or whatever. So those things show that it's a proper business. I would then be looking for either LinkedIn testimonials or client references. And in the book, there is a suggested kind of application form as such, because this isn't a job. So you're not advertising, you know, you're not expecting people to fill in the last 3 jobs on there or send a CV or any of that kind of stuff. It is a business to business service, but you still need to get a sense of them as a person. So I would always put an open-ended question in there that says, I mean, for my associates said something like, I'd quite like to clone myself, maybe a younger, slimmer version, but that doesn't seem to be possible. Tell me about you, how you can delight my clients, and, you know, what you love to do. Just somewhere where they can say, this is me, I'm amazing, and you can check their grammar, get a sense if they've got a sense of humor, because that's important to me. It might not be for you. And depending on the task, you know, if you want someone to do data entry into an Excel spreadsheet, they can have the personality of a peach, right? It doesn't matter. So you're checking for what you need in that initial process, but absolutely vital to have a proper professional setup and to have a bit of background. You know, everyone was new once, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with having a brand new VA, but you're going to find them a little bit less easy to work with than perhaps someone who's been doing it for a year or more. And it's horses for courses. You know, if you're happy, if you're thinking long term and you think, well, actually, I want someone who's got loads of capacity and I want them to grow with the business, then you might say, actually, if they're a bit new, that's kind of fine. I can work with a little bit of wobbling just to get them early and get those times in. If you want someone who's really going to hit the ground running, you go, well, I absolutely don't want anyone who's only been in business for a year. I want someone who's experienced and going to do the job right. Does that help?
So I think what I'm hearing is something about, if you're brand new to having a VA, having a brand new VA isn't probably the best idea.
No, you need someone who's going to hold your hand a little bit, I would say, which an experienced VA will absolutely do. Yeah, they will take you through onboarding. They will steer you through the process as much as you steer them. So yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. So I know that some of our listeners are now going, oh, maybe I might. So can you just give us, if somebody starts with a little bit of support, what's the kind of budget that they would need to have set aside for that, Kathy?
So it depends on who you talk to as to what a little is. For us, the minimum we do really these days is 20 hours a month. Some of our existing clients are on 10 hours a month. Some VAs will do 5. It just depends. And we have some ad hoc clients who do nothing for months and then come on board and do 10, depending on what's going on in their world. So everyone works slightly differently as to how small is too small. So again, when you're putting it out there, you probably want a sense of how many hours you think it is. You know, people typically overestimate how long things take, in my experience.
Because it's how long they take us.
Because it's how long it takes you when you're trying to do your proper job and then fit in all this other stuff around the edges. So, I mean, our busiest one person, if you like, our busiest one client probably uses 50 hours a month as a guideline. So that's not that many hours compared to a full-time job. I mean, obviously VAs charge different rates for compared to employed, because you know what it's like. You're freelance, you've got to cover your holidays, your sickness, your equipment, all of that kind of stuff. So it's not an easily comparable thing. But I would say 10 hours a month is probably a reasonable amount to start with if you think you've got that. And when you talk to VAs and you say, well, I need this doing, this doing, this doing, this doing, they'll probably go, oh, well, I reckon that's going to be X number of hours. And I have in the past said to people, that's about half an hour a month. No, you know, because it's not a volume problem they're suffering from. It's a headspace problem. And actually that's not going to be fixed via VA in that particular context. And in terms of UK, according to the most recent Society of Virtual Assistants website, or survey rather, the average UK rate for a VA these days is £29 an hour. Many will charge much more than that. I mean, I charged more than that when I started 15 years ago. So it's that obviously is a balance of people who charge £100 an hour for very specialised work and people who charge £15 an hour because they're new and they haven't got a clue what they're doing. So I'd say that's on the low end. And also a bit like everything, if you get someone who's experienced and knows what they're doing, they're going to do it faster. So you're better off paying a higher rate to get somebody better and have fewer hours than to have someone who's a bit new and, you know, perhaps hasn't got the background, who's going to take more time, potentially need more checks. But that's a guide. Yeah, absolutely.
So what you're saying is that you can change your life for a few £100s a month.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is entirely possible. My longest standing client is Coach, and I think, I average somewhere between 6 and 12 hours a month for him every month, and that basically takes care of his entire back office, everything. But he doesn't work. You know, he probably does 3 sessions a week, something like that, 4 sessions a week. So he's not a particularly busy coach, but you know, he has things to deal with like purchase orders and hideous client procurement systems and things, all of which I take care of. So yeah, it's entirely possible. And once you start with somebody, you can then see, and they can then see opportunities to increase and take more stuff off you in the fullness of time. Yeah.
And when your VA takes stuff off you, that enables you to have more conversations, coffees, do more work, and all those other beautiful things.
Exactly. And that is what, if you run a business, that's what you should be doing. You should be either coaching or whatever the magic is that you do with your, whatever your skill is. You should be going out and finding new clients or doing some marketing, or you should be resting your brain so that when you come to your next session, you can bring to it everything that you've got, rather than being a slightly exhausted pigeon from, having sat and done a spreadsheet of expense receipts for an hour beforehand.
Yeah.
So it's protecting your brilliance as much as it is, making time for it. Because I think people don't realise that energetically there is a cost to doing everything, as much as hours in a day.
Protect your brilliance. What a great line.
Yeah.
So, Kathy, your book is How to Work with a Virtual Assistant, Outsource Everything But Your Brilliance by Kathy Soulsby. And Kathy, if any of our listeners would like to work with you and your team, how do they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is probably the best bet. That is my main social media function. Or you can find me on the website, which is personallyvirtual.co.uk. But LinkedIn is good. You can hook in with me and we can have a chat. And I'm always happy to chat with people, even if we're not the right fit. I can quite often send somebody off in a direction that might get them the right fit.
Fantastic.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because we're not always the answer. We have quite a specialised niche, and that's not right for everybody. But I've got a great network, and I consider it my karmic duty to get people the answer that they need, which is quite often sending them elsewhere. But I'm always happy to chat to people.
Fabulous.
Wherever that leads.
Fantastic. Well, I will be introducing you to this person who does other things.
Excellent. Love other things.
Thank you for coming to the Coaching In, Kathy Soulsby.
Oh, thank you for having me, Claire. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for listening. I bet this is food for thought on your dog walk today. Take care, everyone, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching In, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching In, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.